All right, thank you everybody for being here today. We had a very productive meeting. I'd like to get this thing started off by inviting Administrator Deanne Criswell up to the microphone to say a couple words.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's very nice to be here today to check on the recovery efforts that are happening in St. Charles Parish as well as St. John the Baptist Parish. We just had a really good meeting to talk about where we're at with recovery. And I just want to remind everybody that Hurricane Ida was an extremely powerful and strong storm. And we talked a little bit about that, about how it went from just a tropical wave into a Category 4 hurricane and made landfall in 72 hours, which didn't give the parish presidents much time to really prepare and warn their residents here. And this is the type of storm that we're going to continue to see as a result of climate change. And then the storm stayed for a long time. I've heard upwards up to about 4 hours it remained on land here as a Category 4 hurricane. And I just heard in there over 24 hours with tropical storm force winds, which means it was destructive. There was a lot of damage, and the recovery from this is going to take a long time. But there's been a lot of progress made already. We talked a little bit about where we're at with debris removal, and upwards of 80% of the debris has been removed already, and we're just 60 days past the storm, and that's an incredible progress to help these communities move towards recovery. We talked a little bit about temporary housing and the ability to be able to get people into some type of a short-term solution while we're looking at longer-term solutions with our temporary housing units in the state's program that we're funding under non-congregate sheltering. A really good example of how the federal government and the state are trying to come up with creative solutions to take care of the needs of the individuals that have been displaced. And we talked a little bit about as we rebuild, that we want to rebuild more resilient and make sure that we're using the mitigation funding that is available to help make this community and all of the communities stronger as we go into next hurricane season or future storms. We can't just continue to rebuild from the storms that we've been experiencing in the past. We have to rebuild for the types of storms that we think we're going to see in the future as we're seeing these storms intensify so much more rapidly and staying on land even longer. And then finally, it was really encouraging to hear too just how resilient these communities are and how the neighbors come together. And I'm always so impressed when I see the ability of neighbors to help neighbors to really help each other get through the recovery process. And these communities are definitely resilient communities with resilient people living in them. FEMA is going to be here throughout this recovery process. We still have staff on the ground supporting the parishes as well as the state of Louisiana. We will continue to be here as long as it takes to continue this rebuilding process. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Tingle from GOHSEP for any comments he might have.
Thank you, Madam Administrator, and thank you for being here and coming back to the state of Louisiana to check back in on how the recovery process is going. I think all of you that live here know that the recovery process is the most difficult part of all of this. It takes patience and persistence. It takes a partnership between all of us, and on behalf of the governor, the state is fully invested in the recovery related to Hurricane Ida, and it was great to have this opportunity to catch up with Administrator Criswell and her team, and we thank them for being here. We thank her for the team that has been here side by side with us throughout, from COVID to Laura Delta from Ida for this year. She touched on a couple of the critical points that I'd like to highlight as well. The importance of mitigation, for these communities, whether it's critical infrastructure that the parishes or school board may own, whether it's mitigation for our homeowners and renters, to build back stronger and to use the opportunity that Ida has provided. I also want to highlight the program that the state has taken on with non-congregate sheltering through the travel trailer program, Ida Sheltering. That's a program that did not exist, almost a month ago. And we started intake. We developed the program guidelines and intake process. And we began buying travel trailers and deploying them. And so as of today, we've purchased over 2,000 units, and we've deployed over 338 of those units, and 158 families as of this morning are housed in those units today. So that's not where we need to be. We need to continue to make more progress, but it's considerable progress for a brand new program over the last 4 weeks. And I want to thank our team for all of the effort that they've put into that, and for our parish partners as well, all the ways that they're stepping up, helping us identify ways that we can support these families, where available land is that we can utilize for some of these units. And so it truly is a partnership. It's tough, it's challenging, but that's what recovery looks like for all of us. And so it requires our continued efforts, and I want to thank Administrator Criswell again for demonstrating her continued support and the continued support of her team. And I'm going to hand it over to the parish presidents to say a few words from their perspective.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'd also like to extend the thanks to Director Tingle and Administrator Criswell for being here in this area and for continuing to support the recovery of the entire, Southeast Louisiana with what is one of the, worst disasters that we've seen. As Director Tingle stated, we touched a little bit on our debris collection. It's going well. If you take a bit of a drive through St. John, you can definitely see the recovery is present. And now we're moving towards housing, and that's a big topic for our residents. One of my ask also in the meeting with the administrator is that we will need some assistance with mitigating future losses, whether it's through assisting homeowners with elevation, and any other type of mitigation that they will need to do if their homes have been substantially damaged and they will be required to mitigate those future losses. So that was an ask of mine that I had as well. And I will just, again, thank our residents for their resiliency. We've done this before with Hurricane Isaac. We're doing it again. And we do have a really good opportunity for us to build back stronger and build back more resilient and hardened infrastructure. And I look forward to working to see that get done in St. John the Baptist Parish. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Parish President Hotard. I'd just like to reiterate some of the things that Administrator Criswell and Director Tingle said. First, again, thank you to Administrator Criswell for coming down to St. Charles Parish and in this area again to view the progress of the restoration. We've come a long way since her previous visit with President Biden, and I can tell you it looks a lot different than the last time they came. First of all, we have electricity again. We're restoring our communications lines and our internet. St. Charles Parish has picked up over 950,000 cubic yards of debris, and will be at 1 million yards by the end of the week. So as you've heard said over and over, this recovery process is a long process, and we're here through that process with FEMA, with the state. I want to thank Director Tingle for working with FEMA, and thank FEMA for working with the state on this non-congregate sheltering program. It's allowed families to get into trailers a lot faster, and we're going to work with them on group sites and in this process as it goes on. So again, I want to thank all involved who've helped. We talked about a number of things inside. We talked about mitigation, and we also talked about risk rating 2.0, which I know a lot of residents in St. Charles Parish are looking at and concerned with as we look to the future of flood insurance policies in coastal Louisiana. And I hope to continue to work with FEMA, Administrator Criswell, to make sure that those policies don't cripple or kill our coastal communities. And I appreciate everybody and everybody's efforts in doing that. With that, we'll go ahead and take questions.
Yeah, well, I just was wondering what the status of the FEMA Direct Housing Assistance Program is. Like, when can we start to see? We still have a lot of people who don't have housing.
It's a good question. Direct housing, we're estimating right now somewhere shy of about 3,000 people have that we think will need FEMA's direct housing assistance. We have licensed in the first few occupants into direct housing, but our direct housing program does take time. And that's why we are partnering with the state on their non-congregate sheltering program, and why we also have the transitional sheltering assistance program where we utilize hotels to help create that bridge until we can get direct housing and its temporary units in place. So we have started to license them in, and we'll continue until we get everybody in a more permanent solution until they can repair their homes.
Any idea how long it would be until you could, I mean, do you have an estimate of time when you might have those 3,000 people in housing?
Again, it is going to take time. I would say it's going to take months before we get everybody in. And part of that is because individuals have their own unique needs as well, right? And so we can see a lot of people that get in right away, but then there's always a few people that have more specific needs that take a little bit longer. I can say that we're looking at trying to put up I'm forgetting the word right now of the parks where we're gonna group site where we're gonna build a group site where we'll put several even several hundred in one site, which would be able to bring in more people at once, and any opportunities that we can put these types of temporary housing units on their own property. That's really what we strive for, because that lets them repair their homes and rebuild their homes and stay on their own property.
Sure. Administrator Criswell, do you see the state's program as being something that is more like what FEMA is moving towards, since that kind of has gotten up running a bit quicker? Does that look like a model for future means to handle this?
I think that there's a lot that we're going to learn from how Louisiana has been able to utilize our non-congregate sheltering policy to help influence what we do in the future, whether that is a matter of changing our program or if it's just a model that we want to continue to partner with our state partners, because they can execute some things differently than FEMA can. And so we're still in the process of putting these units up and working with the state on this, but we are certainly going to take a hard look at what we can learn from it and how we can either improve our programs or create a new partnership with states for future events.
And what does Build Back Better mean for homeowners? What are we asking homeowners? What are we asking residents to do?
I think Build Back Better really is about becoming more resilient. As I talked about in the very beginning, we're seeing more severe storms. They're intensifying more rapidly. They're causing more damage. And as a result of climate change, this is only continuing to get worse. We're seeing this progress year after year. The only way that we're going to be able to keep up with that is starting to reduce the impacts that we're seeing from these storms. And so that is building back more resilient. It's using the mitigation dollars that we have either for an individual home to elevate or to harden the home or the public facilities, or if that's community-wide mitigation that helps protect an entire community. I think that we have to start thinking about the future threats that we're going to face instead of rebuilding to the historical risks that we've been facing in the past, as we're seeing these storms just continue to get worse. And so we have to start thinking about what the future risks are going to be and building back to reduce the impact from those, because we're not going to stop these events from happening in this generation.
For the state-run shelters, where have the majority of the travel trailers been deployed to, and where's the greatest need?
Well, from the outset, we described the program as focusing on the most impacted areas. And so from our perspective, right now, the majority of the units are in Terrebonne, Lafourche, St. John, and St. Charles. So we have a few units in Jefferson Parish and coastal Jefferson largely, as well as we're working some options in St. James and Plaquemines as well. But I think now and for the future, the majority of those units will be in Terrebonne, Lafourche, St. John, and St. Charles.